Hello and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be painting this cute butterfly girl, but on a larger sheet of paper. This is watercolor paper. It is the Phi S 140 pound. There's lots of different ones from that brand, but some of them aren't good, some of them are really good. I have the one I'm using linked below. So what I had done is I had sketched it out in a red colored pencil and then erased most of the lines so I could just barely see. I actually erased it too much, and you'll see here in just a second that I had to go back in with that pencil and redraw what I could no longer see. But then the little crayon things that you can see me using, I just used a yellow one. That is the Jane Davenport Aqua Pastels, I believe. I know they used to sell Jane Davenport products at Michael's. I don't think they do anymore, and I don't think she has them on Amazon. I know they're on her website, but I bought these way back, like 3 or 4 years ago, and I got them at Michael's. So I don't know what the price on them is now, but they look like they're made by the same company, same tin, all of that. I only recently started experimenting with these, and I really like them. The only downside to them is that because there's some sort of wax in them, or something, that it's hard to use a pen over it. And so I've been using them for these larger paintings, because I do all my line art with a brush anyhow. So using a pen doesn't like bother me here, but I can't use them in my sketchbook where I outline my favorite drawings in pen. Speaking of my sketchbook, I really love this girl that I drew. She was just so adorable to me. And I just love creating in my sketchbook lately. For the past couple months, it has just been my favorite thing to do ever. I had gone on a trip to Slovenia, and I couldn't bring any art supplies with me. Well, I could bring some. I brought my sketchbook and my travel watercolor palette and my pencils. And that was it, because obviously we were going to be traveling. I only had a carry-on, and there wasn't going to be that much time, but I didn't want to go through a dry spell with art, and so I thought, perfect, I will just bring a couple little things that way if I get the art itch, I can satisfy it. And I hadn't used my sketchbook in probably a few months. I think the last time I'd used it was October, and this trip was in February. And so there was a long bit of time where I was not sketching at all. And then every morning I would wake up, and I would just make it into our daily routine, where as we had our breakfast, I would get my sketchbook out, do a couple little things here and there, and it made me fall in love again with sketching. And it actually really changed my art. Like, because I was drawing more, I started discovering all these other ways that I really liked to draw. So that's pretty cool and pretty encouraging to just keep on drawing. I made it a daily discipline to use it every single day, and I've actually been surprisingly good about that. Usually I'm not. I'll do it for a couple days and I'll be really into it, and then I'll fall off the wagon and never look back. But it has been so fun to me, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. I love that I am more encouraged now to just be making art as often as I can. I remind myself that I'm an artist and artists make art. And so even if I'm just sitting on the couch watching TV or wanting to be lazy, I'll pull it out and just do little things here and there. I won't try and create a masterpiece every day, but sometimes I'll get just the smallest little inkling of something and just love it. As for other art supplies, I am using the Cotman watercolor field set. I've said this before, that the one they sell on Amazon now is not the one I own. The one I own is in like this blue plastic case, and the one they sell now is white, and it has different colors. I also have heard different things about Cotman's quality not being as good. I'm not totally sure. These are just something I bought for myself because I love tiny things, and I wanted to own tiny watercolors, and that's what really got me back into watercolors, quite frankly. Was just that it was cute and small. And then you'll also see it in the corner. I have a little tin that has 5 filled half pans, and those are mostly Master's Touch, just from Hobby Lobby. I just like Hobby Lobby, so that's where I just picked up some stuff. I figured, it couldn't be awful, and it's not. I don't actually have a big problem with it. And then one of them is also the Cotman Yellow Ochre. It's funny because I don't use super, like, professional art supplies when it comes to watercolor because I've only gotten back into traditional art recently. But I always think that, man, one day when I do, it's just probably going to knock my socks off because I'm so used to just these colors that I have now and I don't see any major problems with them. And so I always think that'd be kind of funny. I also had kind of that same moment the other day. So if you've watched any of my recent videos, I mean, there's only 3, but if you've watched them, I'm using the tiniest little brush ever. It's the brush that came with my Cotman watercolors, and it's just a tiny little round brush. It's actually in the corner there under another brush on the left side. You can just barely see it tucked under that brush, and it works. I didn't think twice about it. I just used it and kept going. And when I had come to the cabin, which where I am right now, my parents have a cabin here in the woods and I just love it. I had forgotten one of my paintbrushes, my larger one, and I knew I wanted a larger paintbrush for this painting. And so I thought, oh, you know what? I'll just go on Amazon and I'll see if I can find anything simple, cheap, that had good reviews. And I got this 3-pack of travel brushes. I don't remember the name. It was, I think from the store, it was called the Golden Maple Store. But these brushes have a different name on it. It's like Fumi or something. I don't really know. And I am so why can't I say that? Pleasantly surprised. Not presently. I am so pleasantly surprised with these paintbrushes. That's a tongue twister. You try saying that 5 times fast. I'm not even going to stop and re-record that because that's freaking hard and I don't think I could do it again. Back to regular programming. So these brushes I loved. I don't know if I love them because I'm so used to using this tiny little brush that's about 3 inches long. And so these obviously had a much better feel in my hand while using them. I felt like I had way more control, but they come to such a nice point. I love the sizes. You can see that the paper I'm working on isn't that big. It's a 5x7 sheet of paper, and I don't go much larger than that, especially when it comes to watercolor, but really ever, because I like drawing small. I don't want to have to get so, like, this huge piece of paper and then get burnt out halfway through and never finish it and regret ever starting that piece. I like small projects that I can finish in a few hours. This whole painting took me about 2 hours, probably a little longer, because there's some stuff that I did off camera, which I'll talk about later. I just needed to get really close to the page, and honestly, it wouldn't have been that interesting to watch anyhow. It is funny to me, though, in doing these videos where I speed up where I'm painting, that it makes it seem so much faster and so much easier. And it made me think even a little more about just with social media in general, how we get so detached from the personal and human element of art. We forget that the thing that we looked at for 10 seconds on Instagram took somebody maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to actually sit down and paint. And that doesn't include the fact that they had to sketch out the concept, that they had to think of the concept, and then all the practice that went into it, and all the time, and the breaks in between. It's just really funny to me. And I like watching these sped up painting videos. I think that they're so satisfying just to see it kind of get filled in. Actually, I do have kind of a funny video. I don't know that it's funny. I think it was kind of funny to watch, but where I took this painting and I sped it up to like 100% on my video editing app, and it's, I think, like 2 hours at least of footage that takes a minute to play. And to me, that is just the epitome of social media, putting hours of my time into a piece and boiling it down to 1 minute just so somebody could go, cool, and move on and never think about it again. I don't know, there's just something almost ironic, or it makes me go, I get angry about the fact that we have to do that. But it's also kind of cool to see somebody paint something in 1 minute that took them hours to do. I actually watched it over and over because I thought, wow, that's really satisfying, and you don't get the full experience, and I don't think you get to appreciate the piece as much because you don't get even a little taste of how much time it took. This video is about 25 minutes long, and that doesn't really tell you all the time. Actually, later on, I do have a real-time clip. I'll point it out, hopefully, while I'm doing the line art. And it's in real time because you've watched this video in, I think it's like 4.5 times speed. It looks like I'm moving in slow motion. But I kept it in because I was just thinking about this conversation of having our artwork, sped up and just showing all the quickness. Like the quickness of TikTok takes away from the time it actually took to make the artwork. And so I thought I'd throw that in there, and I'll point it out, like I said, when I get to the line art portion. Speaking of how much time it actually takes to make paintings, even little ones that aren't super complicated like this, I was also wondering if anybody would be interested in a real-time version. The video would be long, and I'm not talking during it. I'd probably just put some music over it. But I thought maybe if anybody was interested, I would throw it up on my channel, kind of as like a paint with me, painting buddy type of video. I like to have YouTube videos on when I make art. I said last time that right now my favorite creator to watch is the Frugal Crafter. I just think that she's so fun, so funny, and I think she makes some really beautiful artwork. But I like turning her on when I'm drawing or painting or working on things for my Etsy shop because it gets kind of lonely, I think, being an artist at times. I sometimes like to just sit there in the quiet and just be and enjoy the art because I think then you really get sucked into that sense of like flow or really in the zone. But when I'm sitting there doing that all day, I feel the quietness feels kind of loud. And so I always like having a painting buddy. So if you want me to upload that, just please let me know so that I know that at least one person wants to see it, and I'll go ahead and do that. And with our art taking kind of a long time to make, I think that this all kind of, it all works together, everything I'm saying here, because there is so much fastness to the world right now. It feels kind of like everybody's shouting for our attention, and it feels like we're really quickly moving from one thing to the next. And it's overwhelming, and I don't think people really work that well that way. I think that we thrive more in peace and slowness. And that's what I think makes art such a beautiful hobby or career or passion, is that we're able to just sit and be slow and enjoy. I know for myself, I sometimes even catch myself thinking that, I want to get this painting done, or, this is taking too long, or I just feel kind of bored about it at some point. And when I remember to just enjoy making the art, to enjoy going in on the little details, I find it very therapeutic and almost meditative in a certain way. So as I've been working on the wings here, I'm just going in with one of those aqua pastels again. And I like to use those to add different shades of color. I'm going to make the wing edges about kind of like a magenta color. And so I just find that this helps me add a little extra depth with more control. And when I go in just with the watercolors, I like to add different mixes of colors and kind of mix them on the page, and so that they're a little more, how would you say it? Like a little more multicolored, I guess would be the best thing to say. But these allow me to place the color, to be more thoughtful about it instead of worrying about the color drying too fast or, me adding too much water. So I really like these. I'm actually really thinking about getting the Lyra brand aqua colors. They're the water-soluble crayons. I'm not sure if I want to get them or not. I'm not sure if it'll make the ones that I have now from Jane Davenport redundant. I think there's about 8 or 9 colors there, so it's not a very big mix, and they're not primary colors, and so I'm not sure yet. If you've used those, please let me know if you like them. I cannot afford the Caran d'Ache. I'm not even gonna try, but the Lyra ones have really good reviews, and they're not too crazy expensive. While I'm doing the wings here, I wanted to talk about why this is a self-portrait, but clearly has butterfly wings. Like she's like a fairy or some sort of magical creature here. And I have just always felt like a butterfly. I am a butterfly girl. I love butterfly things. I feel like there's butterfly people and there's not butterfly people, and the butterfly people know who they are and they just get it. So when I drew this girl in my sketchbook, I don't think that I necessarily set out with the intention to make it a self-portrait. I honestly can't remember. But as she started to come together, I started to see myself in her. And at that point, I thought, all right, she needs some butterfly wings, because I just associate myself with butterflies. Every time I've done a self-portrait before, which I haven't done a lot of, but I did them back in college, I just always added butterflies. There's something about them. I don't know if it's something that my parents have said to me, so I've started just to associate myself with it. But I love butterflies. And the other thing that I think is kind of funny about this illustration is her hair. So you can see she just has short brownish hair, just like mine. I had recently got my hair cut, and it's the shortest it's been in at least 10 years, but probably longer, maybe even 12 or 15, somewhere around that. And it's so funny to me how much a haircut can impact you. Not only does my haircut make me feel like I did when I was little, and that's kind of been something special for some reason, but I noticed that in all these other characters I was drawing in my sketchbook, so many more of them suddenly had short hair, when usually I would draw them with longer hair or big poofy curly hair. And I think that I started to see myself more in my characters when I gave them hair like I had. I'm honestly not really all that sure why they suddenly started having short hair, but it made me think about how so much of my art, and I think this would be the case for a lot of artists, but I'll just speak for myself here. So much of my art really is a self-portrait at the end of the day, even if it doesn't feel specifically tied to me like this one does. I think that to make good art, or I don't want to call it good art, but art that kind of speaks from your soul, you have to be present in it. It has to come from a personal place, and a place that you feel from within your heart almost. And so I don't know how much sense this really makes, but I didn't start drawing these girls with shorter hair because I cut my hair, but I started feeling drawn to them because I saw myself in them. And that almost makes it sound like I wasn't in charge of their design and their drawing, but I felt that maybe it made me feel more bonded to these characters, or I wanted to, I guess maybe the best way to put it is that it made me realize how much I am personally tied to the characters I draw and the things I draw, and how much of it really is a reflection of me, whether that shows itself physically or in their personality or how they dress or the movements they make. It's all very personal. It's all coming from an individual place. And when you look at my art, and I think this too, it's very silly and playful. There's a nostalgic element to it. And so it's really easy to not take it seriously. I know I struggle with this a bit, where I don't feel like it's very valuable, or I don't think other people will see it as valuable. I think about how maybe other artists see what I do maybe more as doodles rather than art. Actually, if you want to know more about that, I just wrote an article about this on my Substack. All the content on my Substack is totally free. It's under the name Zoe Luna Artwork, just like this channel. And this article that I'm kind of referring to is called Is My Art Not Serious Enough? I believe that's what I called it. But yeah, I think that even with really gentle and silly and whimsical art like this, I wanted to remind people, I guess, that it does have a very personal place that it comes from. Jumping back to the artwork here for a little bit, I'm now going in with my tiny little liner brush, and I've mixed up kind of a muddy green to get it nice and dark for the outlining here. And you'll see here in just a second, right there is the real time. Does it not look like I'm living in slow motion now? I only had this for a couple seconds because it does get kind of painful to watch for too long, if I'm being honest. But it just goes to show that, especially with line art, it just takes time. I think to outline this whole piece took me over an hour, maybe a little, like an hour and a half. But I want to be careful with it because this is the make or break moment to me. Like at this point, the painting is kind of done. And if I'm going to mess up anything, it's going to be a very specific detail. And there's really no way it isn't going to be noticeable. It's actually kind of funny to me. I've talked a lot on here about how I am usually a digital artist and only recently have I gotten back into traditional art. And which is funny because I only share watercolors, it seems so far, on my shorts and on my longer videos. But those just kind of translate a bit better, and it's what I think is fun right now. But with the traditional art, part of what kind of kept me from doing it for a few years, it's what I grew up doing. And then I switched to digital art. And what I love about digital art is that undo button. You don't have any eraser marks. You don't have anything you're trying to cover up. If you don't like it, you can erase it so cleanly. And to me, that was really freeing because it took off so much of the stress of messing up. And so as I've gotten into doing traditional art again, I get so tense while painting. I get really just nervous and stressed. And it's funny because I'm enjoying it the whole time. I'm not enjoying being stressed per se, but I'm enjoying making the art the whole time. And so my question is, does it get better the more you practice? Do you get less stressed? Or is it something that's just a byproduct of liking the piece you make? You know, if I didn't think that this piece looked very good, I probably wouldn't be as careful with it. Actually, if you watch my most recent 2 videos about painting something I don't like in my sketchbook, you can tell I'm not stressed because I'm kind of sloppy with my painting, quite frankly. But with this one, I really loved the way it was going. I loved the colors. I felt bonded to the subject. And so I was so scared to mess it up, especially when it gets to the face. Oh my goodness, when it gets to the face, it is so scary. And one thing I kept reminding myself when I was painting this is that these little imperfections kind of call to the fact, it's a little cue to the viewer that this was made by a human with imperfect skills, imperfect hands, a very human mind, and imperfect eyes. Because especially in this day and age with AI and even digital art, it is really easy to get detached from that human element, which is kind of what I was saying earlier. Of course, I'm not trying to say that digital art is any easier or any less of art than traditional art. I mean, you heard me. I see myself as a digital artist first and foremost. But that being said, you don't see as many of the human marks. You don't see as many of those imperfections that weren't easy to undo, or the little smudges, or the pressure changes as easily. With AI and art, I'm actually not all that scared of it. I don't think that this is what's going to change the game when it comes to art. We've been making art for thousands and thousands of years, and I don't think this is the thing that's going to change it all. And even if it does really alter the landscape, I think will adapt and adjust, but there's always going to be people who are seeking the handmade, the human made. I'll be one of those people. I would much rather support somebody who used their mind and their hands to create something rather than AI because it was cheaper or easier. Of course, when it comes to bigger companies, we have less control over that. But when we do have the option, I think we should support artists and we should celebrate the people who are using it, using their hands, using their mind, doing it the traditional way. Besides, with AI, now I know you could say it's only going to get better, but it can't make anything original. It does not have truly a mind of its own. It cannot create something that a human didn't already make. And I have a hard time believing it will ever be a step ahead of us. I think we will always be a step ahead of it. I think that there is a human element, which seems to be the theme of what I keep coming back to, which is kind of funny, that even if it's not super noticeable, that we are going to be attracted to, and we are going to have favor to the one that was made by a human rather than a computer-generated image. But I'll get off my soapbox for the rest of this video, and we can bring it back to the art. As you can see here, I'm going in and I'm doing the dreaded face details, and you can see I made her hair a little too long on one side. That's okay. She was made by my imperfect hands, I guess. I think that once you see her eyes and her little eyelashes here, that's where you really see the personality of this piece come through. It feels so satisfying when you unbury the character in the art. I love that part. And I love doing these little tiny details that just seem to be so effective. With the liner, it seems to make her pop. I know it's not everybody's style. Some people like a more impressionistic or painterly look. Some people like to do more shading than I do. And this might seem cartoonish to some people, but to me, I love how charming she is. She's very sweet and playful, and she's very nostalgic. Speaking of satisfying, there's something about her feet here that I find very satisfying. The way the colors blended, I am so happy with, and her pointy little toes are so cute. If you can't tell, I'm pretty pleased with this piece, which feels so good, especially after my last video where I just kept talking about how I did not like the artwork. It always feels so satisfying to my heart when I can create something that was exactly the way I wanted it to be. As I'm finishing up the antenna here, I'll tell you what I did not record, but you'll see in the final version. The most noticeable one will be that I added some sparkles to the edges of her wings with some glitter, and then I just went in with that really fine-tuned brush and dotted in where there was white gaps. I hope you love it. I know I do, and until then, I will catch you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.